everyone. Welcome to the Dad of All Trades podcast. My name is Isaac. I know it's been I don't even know how long, months and months since I last recorded something, an episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I wanted to discuss about overcoming adversities and kind of why it took me so long to record another one. And I want to talk a little bit about mental health and just overcoming stuff. I think everybody could use some of that these days. I know I did. So wanted to start off by saying I don't know if anyone's listening, but thank you for listening. I struggled for a long time to figure out what I wanted to do with this, why I was doing it, if it's a waste of time, if why do I care to even try this? But I think it kind of falls in line with what I'm going to talk about. But every time I think about recording one of these, I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about? What's important? Is this? I just don't want to talk into a microphone and just word vomit nothing. So I think it may be a good idea for me to create some sort of topics and kind of go over stuff that might be useful to people. So I want to kind of go back and talk about my early life and what led me to my mental health sort of journey. And I'm also trying something different, recording on the GarageBand app on my iPhone, my work phone. So I'm hoping that the audio is good. So I guess we'll find out. All right. So my story begins probably back when I was born in Evansville, Indiana. My mom was only 19 when she had me, and my dad was working at a power plant as a technician. He had his 2-year degree. And kind of worked his way into working at the power plant. And my mom was very young. She didn't really know. She came from Jordan. Both my parents are from Jordan. We're originally Palestinian. My dad was the first generation born refugees from the 1940s, from the Nakba. I don't know if there's another episode that I'm planning in the future to talk a little bit more about that, since it's kind of relevant today. But without going too much into it, that's basically the story of the birth. But then when I was about around 1 year old, or maybe a little younger, my parents got divorced. And my mom took me with her back to Jordan because I was really young. I still needed her. And she struggled a lot with... Back then, it was in the culture. It's difficult for a woman that's young to get divorced. It's much more difficult for her to remarry, and she couldn't spend as much time with me as she maybe felt like she could. Or, I don't want to. I love my mom to death, but I think she had a really hard time also, and I don't fault her for it really, and that's part of my journey of learning that I'll talk about later on. But I would basically, now I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm saying. But basically, I went back, lived with her, bounced around from home to home. My aunt took care of me a lot. My dad was in the U.S. working, trying to remarry. And so I stayed in Jordan from when I was 1 until about 4.5, maybe close to 5. And then right before I turned 5, let's talk about during that time. During that time, I didn't feel like I had a stable home. I was bouncing around from uncle to uncle, aunt to aunt, spend time with my older cousins who kind of looked after me, which I appreciate and love all of them for everything that they did for me. I feel like I need to say that because in no way is this a reflection upon them at all. They did more than I could have asked for me when I was young. But it did give me sort of a feeling disenfranchised, they all have their mom and dad, their stable homes, and here I am. I look at my kids, my son who's 4, and I'm like, damn, imagine if he just left his mom and just, went out into this whole different world at 4. It's hard. So as I had kids, it also kind of helped me to figure out what I was going through. So, but we'll talk about a little more about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself over and over, but sorry about that. But anyway, so around 4.5, close to 5, I moved back to the U.S. To live with my dad. At that time, my dad had remarried and had 2 boys. Those are my 2 younger half brothers, and they were also really young. I think one was probably a baby, like an infant, like maybe a year or so, maybe less. And then the other one was maybe 2 when I came, or just under 2. And so I came to a whole new world, a whole new life, a whole different culture, a whole different atmosphere. Now I went from living in a big city around a bunch of people to this very quiet, very small town with not very many other like Muslims are out of there. So at that time, it was like a culture. It was like a shock for me, because now I don't have my mom, and I went through lots of battles figuring out, okay, why did this happen? Like what, now I'm here. My mom's not here. I have this kind of new mom, and she's looking after me. She's doing a lot of things for me. She takes care of me, but I didn't feel a connection with her, right? Like an emotional, like mother-son connection, or like like me cry on your shoulder when I stubbed my toe. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. I didn't have that, and I never really had that as much with her. Just because I wasn't like, if I was like 6 months old, then I came, maybe it would be different. Right. But because I was 4 or close to 5, it's, I don't think I need to explain that, but I think you guys understand what I'm saying. So then I, kind of had to get used to living in this new system, right? My dad was not around much at all. He was always at the plant working. He would work like 12, basically like 14 hours straight, almost every day. And sometimes he'd work night shifts, so we would go to school, wouldn't see him. So I didn't really see him very much, right? And he was supposed to be the one that's like with me the most. And actually, when I first started going to school, in preschool, I didn't speak any English. I only spoke Arabic. And so I had to learn English very quickly. And my dad was so busy with work. My uncle, who was a college student at the time, I think, he had to take me back and forth to school. My dad did too, but my uncle also helped a lot. My uncle's the one who brought me over here because my dad couldn't come and bring me, right? Because he had like little kids. So that's kind of that whole thing, right? Like you can already kind of see a picture of instability and maybe some like anger or some like sadness or whatever like that. There's that picture, right? But then growing up as the older brother of these 2 half brothers now, growing up with them, they knew me when they were like really young. So to them, it's like, oh, I just have this older brother now, right? From their perspective, I just grew up with them. But from my perspective, I was placed in this, if that makes sense. All right, so fast forward like several years, right? And I don't want to start talking negatively about anybody in the loved ones in my life, like talking about my parents. But my dad, he struggled with not wanting me to be attached to my mom overseas and not wanting to go back. He wanted me to stay. From a mom's perspective, so basically like what I'm trying to say is I kept hearing 2 sides of a story, right? And I think that's a pretty common theme for other kids that go through divorce, right? So, but for me, it was like, I want to go see my mom. I miss my mom, but I'm not allowed to. You know, I wasn't even allowed to talk to her much. Back then, it was, this was like 90s, right? Early 90s. So back then, we didn't have like cell phones and like WhatsApp and call. You couldn't call over the internet. You had to get like a calling card. And so it was expensive to call overseas. But still, I wanted to have a relationship with her, and I just felt like I wasn't allowed to. But right, I didn't even get to visit her. So you can kind of see even more of a picture of what I'm trying to talk about. So, and the reason I'm talking about this is because I never talked about it, and it bothered me for years, but my whole life till now, which is insane. Because you would think from the outside, you would think you had lots of people around, you had a stable home, other kids didn't have. But I still struggled with a lot of the mental side of things, like feeling like a belonging, feel like I fit in, and then through all of the bullying and the other issues I had in school as a kid, all throughout, all the way till high school, till the end of high school, really. It's all that feeling of not belonging was cemented. I was the only Muslim/Arab kid in the whole school. It was a big high school too. Right. So, all that stuff falls in line with what I'm talking about. So then I basically, my dad was like my center focus. Right. So when I finished high school, never talked to anybody about this stuff. Didn't talk to a therapist, didn't talk to nobody, right? And I struggled with anger, struggled with depression throughout the whole time. One time I even had a panic attack, and I collapsed in the bathroom when I was in high school and had to go to in an ambulance to the ER, and was diagnosed with tachycardia because my heart would start beating really fast all of a sudden. And I didn't realize back then, nobody gave it a term, but it was basically like severe anxiety panic attacks. I would have those all the time, where I wore a heart monitor, right? And I'm sure there's some people listening that maybe do also have anxiety that can relate to this, right? And with anxiety, you develop habits to foot tapping, nail biting, talking to yourself, whatever it might be. ADHD has some of those things too, but for me, it was mostly anxiety. So I basically started going to college for mechanical engineering, flunked out. After 2 years, I got horrible grades because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I was lost, right? I started at a decent university at Evansville, and I just didn't do well. And I hid my grades from my dad when I got a letter putting me on academic probation, and he found out at that same time, 2 years into my first try at college, my dad was retiring and planning on moving and starting a business in Alabama, in Birmingham. So he started a tutoring center business. So he was like, you know what? You're not going to stay here anymore. You're going to come with me. You're going to help me start this business. You're going to start over. And I had visited Birmingham, and to me, Birmingham was like a big city. It was like New York compared to where I came from. So I wasn't against it, right? So I ended up doing that, taking a year off of any school. I just worked 3 jobs, basically made as much money as I could to support myself. Because at that time, my dad said, "I'm not giving you a dime. You're gonna figure this out." And I'm glad he did that, because it taught me that to kind of be more self-reliant and stuff. So I actually took a year off, got in-state. Once after I did the year of working and all that, I got in-state tuition in Alabama. After a year of being off, I think I started 2 businesses. I got my personal training certification thanks to my aunt who helped me pay for it. And then I did a PC repair business. So those 2 things taught me a lot about what I wanted to do in my life. And I realized I didn't really enjoy doing these sorts of services for people as much, because I didn't really like dealing with people in that way. I always had a problem with like social anxiety and talking with people. It's just uncomfortable for me to like go to somebody's house and then they're giving somebody's like giving me like a whole come to Jesus spiel. Or I come to my church and it's like, this is uncomfortable. I just wanted to fix your computer and go, and I just didn't want to deal with that kind of thing. So that wasn't my forte. And then I realized like it was my dad actually who was like, well, you've been tinkering with electrical shit your whole life. Why not just get do a electrical like associate's degree, like electrical tech, electronics technology or something. So at the time there was a little community college that had a program for electronics technology and kind of like automation stuff, which I always was fascinated by, but I never thought I would be like, that's one of the themes is never feeling like I'm good enough to do something. Because I thought if I wanted to go down this road, I'm not good enough for it. So I would always kind of talk myself out of it, if that makes sense, And I'm sure there's some people who can relate to this feeling of when you feel like there's a task you need to do, right? You feel like, oh, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not basically just not good enough, right? So anyway, that's that. And then what was I talking about? Yeah, so flunked out, went back to school, started electronics technology, we did really good, partly because I was paying for it out of my own pocket, and it was not cheap. I was struggling to make payments, working 3 jobs. I'd get up at 5 in the morning. All right, so after that, started back doing the program, did really well because I was paying for it myself because I felt like I'm responsible for this and I can't screw this up now. And I actually enjoyed the coursework because now I knew, okay, maybe I'll. There was a plant in Birmingham that makes Mercedes vehicles, right? So I thought like, oh, I can go be a maintenance tech at Mercedes and start a decent career. Maybe work my way up. Who knows? So that was kind of my thinking, right? Was like, do something like this, right? So I went through the classes, did pretty well. Which I didn't think I was capable of doing, right? I had some struggles, in the beginning, like my math classes especially. I had a really hard time with test taking, and I had horrible test anxiety. And I wish somebody back then would have told me, like, hey, just go talk to a therapist about this stuff. I really feel like now that I went through this, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but had I just talked with someone, man, the potential that I could have had back then could have been so much more, right? I had so many problems with my parents, with my brothers, with my family, with the divorce thing, with my mom, not knowing where I fit in. I'd go spend time with my mom and feel like I want to stay here. I don't want to go back. You know what I mean? Like there's so much going on that I wish I had someone really good to talk to back then. So. And looking back, I thank God I didn't go down like really dark paths where I maybe use drugs or worse, So, anyway, so finished my degree right before I finished, I think. Yeah, I think it was right before I finished. I saw a job posting for a company that makes automation, like control panels, right? So I applied for the job. I think I called them. Actually, I don't remember. And they were like, "Oh, just come on this day at this time and do like a little test, like fill in your application and do a little test." And the test was like something I'd never seen before, but because I had played with wiring and electronics, and I would build like remote control cars and build circuits and stuff like that throughout like high school and even when I was younger. The test was actually this test was for an industrial control panel wiring, and I did it and I passed. I thought when I saw the thing, I was like, "There's no way! Look at these guys over here. They're like older than me. They know what they're doing. They know how to wire this stuff. What the hell do I know?" Once again, putting myself down. common theme, right? So I did the test, passed it, not even thinking I would pass it, and they offered me a job to build panels in the shop. And I had still not graduated from my associates. I was like my last 2 semesters or something like that. So I started building panels, and I almost doubled my hourly wage, because before that I was only making like, I don't even know, like maybe $8 an hour, $8.50, $9 an hour or something like that. And all of a sudden now I'm making like 15 or something like this. I forgot exactly, or 13 or 14. I don't remember. And so, the way it would work is the electrical engineers would send down their electrical schematics to the shop, and the shop would take their schematics, get the panel punched and built. On the control panels, there's like holes you punch out for the operators. Like operators are like lights or buttons that you push a button, start, stop, reset, that kind of thing. Or switches, selector switches. So we would get the plans, the schematics. We would build the panels. We would wire the panels. I had to learn how to use tools, how to drill and tap using oil, how to put on a fiberglass hazmat suit and cut fiberglass panels. It taught me a lot. And at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with this. Like, I thought, okay, the only hope I have is maybe I'll move up to be an engineer here after going back to school and doing another 2-3 years of school. And so I started taking the drawings from the electrical engineers and finding mistakes, and I would mark it up and send it back. And then I think that they saw like, oh, he has some potential with actually like understanding the schematics. He understands the electrical schematics, and he just finished his 2-year degree. So they gave me an opportunity to go work in as a CAD operator. Computer aided design is what CAD stands for, if you don't know. And I went up to the CAD department and started modifying drawings, right? And I would take the drawings, the electrical engineers would give us their changes, their red lines, red marks, and we would take their red lines, red marks, and we would modify them on the computer in CAD, and then we would finish those drawings, print out a copy, send. This is before, like, we used to use mostly printouts back then, and then I give the printouts to the electrical engineer. He would approve or not approve, and then send back more red lines, and we'd go back and forth. That was kind of what I did. And so I tried to move up into like engineering, but they basically like didn't even want to look at me until I got an engineering degree, right? So at the time I couldn't do that. I couldn't afford to do that. I was barely making enough money to like, survive basically. So, just it wasn't in the cards for me to go back to school at that time. So, I just made a resume. After I did that panel building for maybe 3 years or so, and then maybe two or three, and then I went into CAD design for another 2 or 3. So I was there for probably 5 or 6 years, maybe I'd say. And I just, first of all, I knew I didn't want to do the CAD design. I knew I didn't want to build panels the rest of my life, right? I knew I wanted to do something more. I just didn't know what it was. But I knew that I was on the right track. At least I felt like I was for the first time, So then I put out a resume, and I think it was Career Builder. And I got a call from a company in Atlanta who does automation projects for big companies like UPS, FedEx, that kind of thing. So I got a call from them like, hey, we need a traveling technician, somebody to go to different job sites and approve, check the wiring. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I could do that, like travel and check panels and approve panels and stuff. Like, that's crazy. So I thought like, whoa, like that's huge for me, And they didn't really have, I had no experience doing that kind of thing. I just did panel building and designs. That's it. But they needed people bad, and they knew they kind of, when I came in, I did like a aptitude test, which I did not, I found out later on, like much later on, like a year later, I didn't score that high on it because I didn't know anything about the programming side. the PLC programming stuff. Only what I learned in school, which was very little, and it was on old Slick 500s, which are like, older PLCs, which at the time when I applied for this job, we were using like Control Logics, which are newer ones, So I scored relatively low for the programming, but high on the aptitude for like electrical work. So they gave me a very low end job with a very low end salary doing 100% travel panel checkouts. That's basically what it was, panel checkouts. So I was considered an engineering technician was my first title. And so the good thing was it was in Atlanta. It's only 3 hours from my parents. And I didn't even have to get an apartment. So I was like, I could just pocket all this money. And when I am done traveling, if I have to be in the office, they put me in a hotel. And if I finish from a project and I have like a weekend, I'll just go back to my parents' house. So that's what I did for like a year or so, until they were like, hey, we can't keep putting you in a hotel every time you have office work. So you got an apartment. So I got an apartment eventually. But in between the time I started there and a year after that is when I met my wife, and we got married a year after I started, I think. Yeah, about a year. Literally, almost exactly a year after I started with them. So now you're talking about a whole different life progression, right? So, and this whole time, I felt like I was doing okay. I felt like I got this, being married to her was like so awesome, because it was like, first of all, she's amazing, but also there was a whole new chapter in my life, so I was excited for. So all the other old shit, like the stuff from my past, didn't really bother me very much. Yeah, I had some things with my mom, but I had this whole new task in front of me to tackle, or this new like chapter, So let's fast forward now to a few months ago. Two kids, family life, stuff like this. And over the last several years, I would go through these ups and downs of depression and severe anxiety. And then about right when we bought our house in 2020, I was having panic attacks. At the time, I thought I was having heart problems. Went to the ER actually more than once. But at that time, it was scary, because it was like, oh, my chest feels tight. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Come to find out, it was all just stress and anxiety. The financial anxiety and stress was insane. And I didn't even, it didn't really register what was happening at the time, right? I thought there was just something physically wrong with me. And I would hear from different people, my brothers and my wife, like, go to get a therapist, like talk to somebody. And I just kept fighting it, because I thought, like most people, like only people that are like crazy need one, or people that are really far gone need it. I would tell myself, oh, you're fine. You don't need that. You can fix it on your own. You can do this on your own. You can, like, just excuses, not realizing how much it could help me. So, so I found somebody to talk to. Finally, I looked for a while, and a couple of them I talked to either weren't available, or first of all, I wanted someone that understood my culture. It didn't have to be somebody Arab or Muslim, but somebody who understands the culture. Maybe somebody from the Middle East, or maybe ideally someone like me who was born here. Excuse me, but comes from a different culture, right? And I found that. My therapist now is very good, and he understands the culture, and one thing that has helped me a lot throughout this journey is like opening up about this stuff was very hard. And he told me, he was like, you're very reluctant to open up. I was like, yeah, because I'm not used to it. And so he understands that part, and I slowly start opening up, and every week we talk, and we have more things to go over, right? And I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not sitting here telling you all this stuff because I'm so great and I know what no, not even close. I still have a long way to go, and I think everyone does. But the reason I'm talking about this as me, as somebody who struggled for years and years and years to talk to somebody without, it was the first time people started telling me, hey, you need to talk to somebody, was my wife and my brothers, who my brothers had also started therapy before. And I tried, I wanted to try it, but I also was scared, I was too scared to admit that I was scared, if that makes sense, right? So I finally did it, and it was hard at first, even hard to talk in the first 2-3 sessions, but it has helped tremendously. Where now I feel like I'm more in control by trying things like CBT and doing exposure therapies, things like that, to help with to mitigate some of the anxiety, and then also talking with my doctor. And I tried different medications. The SSRIs never really did it for me. Too many side effects, but of all things, it was I take and I'm not giving medical advice, by the way, but it's for anxiety, it's helped me a lot. It's hydroxyzine, which is basically just an antihistamine. But for me, it somehow, for some reason, it just works really well. So I take that most days in the evenings, because in the evenings is when I get the flare-ups of anxiety. I've always had insomnia my whole life, trouble sleeping, from the same anxiety. I had insomnia since I was a kid. So that's kind of the story of the mental health journey. But a big part of it was feeling like I'm out of control. Because one thing that and I'm saying we as children of immigrants, is we tend to we don't really know, we don't have a guideline on how to live our lives very, very well, right? Because our parents came from overseas. They did things a certain way. We're expected to do things like how they did it, but our society demands us to be a different way than what our parents were. You know what I'm saying? So that to me, that was difficult. My parents were very, very traditional in how they did their marriage. And I was I thought, I don't want my marriage to be like their marriage. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything, but it's just, I didn't want that system. I wanted a better system, but I didn't know how to get there. That causes anxiety. Couple that with the financial stress of buying a home in 2020 with the crazy COVID, inflation, all that crap, that add even more. Couple that with more debt. I have to buy appliances. I don't have appliances in here. I had to buy appliances. Now, all of a sudden, I've got thousands and thousands of dollars of credit card debt and credit card payments that I can't afford. It's all this stuff is heavy, man. It's heavy, right? And the whole time I thought, I don't want my wife to have to work. She wants to work, fine, but I don't want her to have to work. But it just gets harder and harder and harder, and it's hard to continue that. And she does work because she wants to. But I also am trying really hard to free up the finances so that she doesn't have to in the future if we were to have a third kid or something. Inshallah. So the whole point that I'm making is, do not diminish your feelings, and do not, if you feel overwhelmed and you feel like I did for a long time and still do sometimes, not as much as I did before, just find someone to talk to. Find somebody that's culturally relevant, that understands the culture, if you can. If you can't, any therapist is better than no therapist, honestly, I think. But talk to somebody who can help, somebody who, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression like I did, or life changes or trauma, like in my case, find someone that specializes in that, because it will help a lot. And now I'm starting to sound like some kind of health guru or something like that, and that's not my intent. I gave you guys my story because, one, I didn't know what I wanted to do with this episode, but I think this is a good place to start. I don't think I had gone over my story before, in previous ones, but this is good. I think, because and you guys can email me or message me. I think my email will be in the description. You can tell me if this is relevant or not for you. If you want to hear more things like this, I have a lot more things I could talk about in this space, but I wanted to keep it short. I'm actually doing this episode during a lunch break in my work schedule. So, but anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. And please feel free to send me an email. Yeah, so that's all. And I appreciate everybody listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Peace out.